First of all, nice to see you, Kim.
Nice to see you too, Pamela.
I'm super inspired by you, and I'm very, very excited to be moderating this fireside chat today. I hope that the thousands of Latina in tech members that are watching will be equally inspired and impressed by you. I have a few questions today.
Thank you, and I'm super excited to be here with you today and to have our chat. So fire away.
Well, you've been part of the C-suite at several companies and one of the few Latinas to do so. And you recently started a new role as the Chief Legal and Business Officer at OneTrust. And you were previously the President of Strategy and Business Management, as well as the Chief Legal Officer at HP. Can you tell us a little bit about your career path to the C-suite and what your most recent roles entail for those members of the audience who may not be very knowledgeable about those?
Yeah, I'm happy to share. I started my career as a lawyer. I still am a lawyer, but I thought when I went to law school that I would have a traditional legal career, and by that I just mean I thought I'd be working primarily as a lawyer, and that is indeed how I started out at a very large law firm, working with and for a lot of companies. I thought that's what I would be doing for the rest of my career. And about 6 or 7 years into doing that, I liked what I was doing, but someone approached me and said, have you ever thought about going in-house to a company? And I said, no, I don't even know what that is. I don't know how that works. I don't know what that is. I had never thought about it. And they said, well, you should think about it. You might like it. And the reason they said that to me is because in addition to being, a lawyer, and I was a litigator, so I did trials and other things, they thought that I had a particularly business-oriented attitude, and also that I was a bit more entrepreneurial than a lot of other lawyers. They thought I might like it. I honestly didn't know a lot about it. And so I started to think about it and check it out. And I thought, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? It is a change, and it's not something I was thinking about doing. But what I knew exactly what I would be doing at the law firm for the next 30 years or 40 years if I stayed. Some people like that, but I thought, oh, I don't know if I really, want to do this for another 30 years. So I said, I'll take a chance. I'll try it. And if I love it, I'll do it. And if I don't, I'll do something else. And if I'm terrible at it and they fire me, I'll come back, and I can always practice as a lawyer. And what I found out was I actually really loved it. In fact, I loved it so much that what happened is I evolved from being a lawyer in one big company to being a lawyer in a different type of company altogether. I went from industrial controls and products and a business to business type environment to a consumer products company, to a healthcare company, and then on to a technology company, and I've been in tech the last 6-7 years. But I think that the reason that my career evolved the way that it did is because I have always been interested in business. I've always been interested in entrepreneurship. And also I was always willing to take a risk and try something different and new. It worked out. Those choices worked out for me.
That's a perfect segue into my next question. Your success hasn't been limited to a specific industry. Seems like now most recently at tech, but going through consumer products to health companies. So in these different industries, you also assume different roles, as you just mentioned, and different responsibilities for things like corporate strategy and governance, like operations, risk management, et cetera. My question is, how were you able to navigate working and moving between such different industries? And what advice do you have for our members at Latinas in Tech who may be looking to switch industries or job scope?
Yeah, so I have a couple of, so there's two parts to your question. Let me answer the first one is starting probably like 8 or 9 years into my career, I started to be a lot more thoughtful and deliberate about what I wanted to do. and exploring different things and trying to make a plan, and not like a plan for, oh, where do I want to be in 10 years or 5 years, but literally something a little more incremental, right? So the first big choice was, oh, do I want to be a lawyer or do I want to go into a business and see what that's like? And I did that. Then I was a lawyer in a business and they said, oh, you do litigation and now you're going to do commercial and you're going to do business, mergers and acquisitions and maybe some intellectual property. And at each step I said, oh, that would be interesting. I'd like to add on. I want to understand more about that. I want to know how to do that. And it's the same with some of the business functions. At a certain point in time, after I had a pretty long career as an in-house lawyer, I started to think about, well, it does seem kind of interesting to do strategy or do business development or do customer service. And I was naturally curious about those things. The big thing is that I cultivated relationships with people along the way. Some people who I'd known, some people who I sought out to talk to them about, help me understand, what is that? How does that work? Do you think I could do it? What do you need to know to do that? How do you think I could get an opportunity to try and do that? And I would raise my hand for different things, right? That might not have anything to do with my area. So if the company needed to figure out, okay, we have to figure out how to save $60 million, I'd say, can I be part of the team to help figure out that plan? And that was a way to get me more exposure in the company, but also to learn about different things that otherwise I wouldn't be doing, right? I wouldn't be doing financial analysis. I wouldn't be doing operational planning. Those are all ways to do that. So the two things really behind the story are, number one, being thoughtful. And when I say I had a plan and it was incremental, I would think about, what do I think I would like to do? What do you need to have by way of experiences and a fit with who you are to do something? And then do an inventory, where am I? And then how do I get from here to there through projects, through assignments, through, getting to know people? And who do I need to build relationships with, both inside and outside, to help me figure out how to get there? And I really worked hard on both those aspects of things. And I had also some good luck in meeting, people who were willing to help me and teach me, help me, give me guidance, and eventually people who would sponsor me and say, I know Kim works over here, but I think she would be a great leader or a great person on this project or on this team, or I think she has capabilities. We should give her a chance to do that. And those, again, that's not an accident. And it didn't just happen because I worked hard and was very good at the things that I did. That was part of it. But it also happened because I sought those people out and specifically said, will you help me? Will you consider me? Will you put my name forward? Will you promote and sponsor me for this kind of role?
Right. And I think we've all heard the importance of mentorship and, sponsorship. Can you briefly, maybe just like a quick follow-up, can you briefly explain kind of what the difference is between both of those, and
Sure.
How do you find a mentor and a sponsor in your company or externally?
So mentors are people. Mentors and mentoring is about your personal growth and development. And what I would say about mentors is, three things. All mentors don't have to be the same. And I want especially Latinas, to think about mentorship across these dimensions, because I think too often people think it's one thing, and it's really a couple of different things. Mentors can be people with whom you form a deep relationship over time. And the best mentors are the ones that you have a relationship with, who know you well, you know them, you trust them. They want to help you grow and learn. And sometimes that's in your company, sometimes it's in your industry, sometimes it's external. But the most important thing is they need to know about the things you want to do. They need to know you and be able to give you very specific feedback to help you. And you need to listen to their feedback. And let me give you one quick story, right? So early on, after I went to my first corporate job, after a few years, I was like, ooh, I think I could be in the C-suite one day. I think I can do that. I want to do that. I think that could be a great career. And I started talking to people and asking, I really want to do this. Who can I talk to? Who could help me? Who could help me understand how you get from here to there? And I was introduced to a gentleman who was a general counsel, who was in the C-suite, who was outside of my company, just through a network of conversations. And he said, "Oh, sure, we can go to lunch and we'll talk about it." And, he was, thank goodness, he was just a kind, good person who wanted to help promote and sponsor women and women of color in particular in their careers. So he met with me and we had a great conversation and we built a relationship that lasted years. But it was a series of discussions. And here's what
That's
I mean
amazing.
about here's what I mean about mentoring, right? I let him get to know me. I got to know him. And he was much older. He was like 20, 30 years older. He'd done everything that I wanted to do. And one day he took me to lunch and I was frustrated because I've been, working for a few years and I felt like I should be promoted. And I was, having all this, I was, just very frustrated and saying, "Listen, I've done everything that we talked about. I've worked hard. I've, delivered, and I feel stuck and I'm not getting promoted." And, he looked at me and he said, "First of all, I think you're wonderful. I think you're smart. I think you're going to absolutely do this in your life and career." He said, "But now I need to tell you something very difficult. If you want to succeed, there is a tough message that I don't think anyone has told you." He's like, "You're smart, you're aggressive, you're brilliant. And if I was your boss, I would want to throw you out a window." And he said, "Wait a minute, why?" And he goes, "Because you're a giant pain in the ass." He's like, "You have to learn not to be a pain in the ass to everybody." He's like, "You're smart and aggressive and you want to go at a speed and you want everyone to be like you." He's like, that doesn't work. You have to learn to put other people first. You have to learn to do some things and I will teach you, but I need you to hear me, right? And mentors, long-term relational mentors, are the people who know enough about you and what you want to do to give you that feedback. You can have a transactional mentor. It doesn't have to be my friend many, many years. It can be bite-sized. If you meet someone you admire, if you meet someone who does, what you do, instead of saying, "Will you be my mentor?" which is a big ask, right? Because most people think about the relationship. You can say, "I'm working on one thing or have one project. I wonder if you've ever done this. Would you be willing to share? I want to do one thing, or I have one issue, or I was thinking about this one spot. I wonder if I could get your perspective just on that." It's a very low threshold, very low ask. You're not making a big imposition on someone who doesn't know you. And most people are super happy to help if they know that they can do it in a bite size. Not everybody's ready to invest in a big relationship. Maybe that becomes one. Maybe it doesn't, but start, just consider doing it transactionally. And then there's the in-between in your company, which can be just for a specific period of time or in a particular job. But it's not always easy and it's not great to have people who work with you or you report to. It's always good to have someone who has a little bit of different perspective and who you feel safe being super honest and candid with, without fear that somehow it's going to come back on you. So that's mentors. Sponsorship is very different. Sponsorship is somebody who has political and personal capital that they are willing to use to get you something. That is someone who's willing to sit, where, as they say in Hamilton, in the room where it happens. And they're in the room where it happens, and they know you and know your name and are willing to say, "I think Kim is the one." And they have the kind of juice and respect in an organization that can get you to be considered seriously for those roles, right? So your hard work and effort makes you eligible, but it's sponsors in the room where conversations happen about who should be promoted and how that happens, who have to know you and speak about you in a way that influences the other people. That's a very different kind of thing. And I have had, 4 or 5, maybe even 6 major sponsors at every stage of my career, sometimes to get from one company to another, sometimes to get from one level or position to a higher one, definitely to go from general counsel to president of strategy and business management, which is to have the CEO be your sponsor and your person, or other executives. And I sit on public company boards, and to do that You have to have people in the world who know you and know what you do and are willing to say, I know somebody who might be fantastic for this board. That is sponsorship. Sorry, it's a long, it's a long answer, but this is some of the most important stuff. No one gets anywhere in their career without a robust set of mentors and sponsors. I don't know, maybe it happened somewhere. Certainly I couldn't have done it. And I don't know a single super successful person who didn't have that.
Yeah, no, this is bite-sized like information for Latinas in the room that are going to be super, excited to kind of save for a long period of time. So thanks for that. Super helpful. And congratulations on like finding your mentors and your sponsors to propel you through your career. Well, now I want to switch over a little bit to some DEI related questions.
Okay.
I know that you've been like for many years an advocate for DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the legal and tech industries as well. So as a successful executive and manager of teams, how do you get the teams and the entire company, especially leadership, involved and on board with DEI initiatives? If so, can you give us an example of some of those initiatives that you've co-led or sponsored in prior roles?
Yeah, so it's a big topic. So let me try and break it down into digestible pieces, because it is a very big topic. And it really does vary from place to place, environment to environment, culture to culture, that I've been in. Some are much better at it than others. Some are much more committed to it than others. Some are much more sophisticated and successful at it than others. But in my mind, what it takes in order to successfully have an environment that is diverse, that is also inclusive, and that is equitable, it starts with having clarity as an organization about the value and importance of it. I think we're at a place in time today where more people recognize that in order to attract talent, in order to generate innovative solutions, in order to have credibility and trust, right? And this to me is a big topic, because I think the conversation has shifted, in my mind, in a very important and good way, which is in the future, if you want to have trust and credibility with your stakeholders, with your employees, with your customers, with your investors, you can't just talk anymore. You actually have to be able to demonstrate not just your commitment, but your actual results around these things with people, and the expectation around it has gone up. And so I think it starts with figuring out how to make sure that teams and organizations have clarity about why. Why do we care about diversity, inclusion, and equity? Why does it matter to us as a business? Why does it matter to us as executives? Why does it matter to us as human beings? What does it mean to us? And to have good clarity around that, right? Which is to say, I could point you to a whole pile of research that is very clear about the performance, innovation, and cohesive culture of more diverse teams, right? And so you just have to have clarity. This is actually something that is really important for innovation in tech and everywhere else. It's important for performance. It's important for talent retention. It's important to attract talent. What does it mean? What does it mean? What do we mean when we talk about it? Having clarity in that definition. And I think people worry that they might speak imperfectly or have an imperfect definition, but I think you have to help people get past that by being able to encourage dialogue on difficult topics in a way that isn't like judgmental, but that is meant to try and get at what do we really mean? What does this mean when we talk about it? And then the last piece, and the piece where I think more than ever people are struggling now, but is possibly the most important piece, if not just as important as the value, like having clarity about the value of it and why you're doing it and what it means, is how. And there's this great quote, I think, but don't hold me to it, that it's James Clear, but it says, we don't rise to the level of our aspirations, we fall to the level of our systems. So what that means is you can talk about diversity all you want, but if you don't have a specific approach, specific systems, transparency, accountability, a way to show that you actually do it, then you may as well not do it at all, because it's not going to happen. And
Right.
so, like, my example that I'll use is the initiative I did at HP, where I said, hey, if you want to do business with HP, to our law firms, if you want to do business with HP, we like being your partner, we like working with you, but we think you need to do a better job of making sure that the teams that work on our accounts are actually diverse teams. And we also want to make sure that those diverse teams have a meaningful role in our business and that they get credit from you for the work that they do for us. They get recognition, they get financial credit, they get professional development credit. And we put together a program. We said, here's what we mean by diverse teams. And we were very specific. Here's what we mean by meaningful business. Here's what we mean by meaningful roles. And then we built a whole system to track and monitor whether they were doing it or not. And when we started, less than 50% of our partners were fielding diverse teams, and our business was being managed mostly by non-diverse partners as well. Within 2 years, 95% of our business was being serviced by diverse teams. And four or five out of our top 10 accounts, which means the places where we spend the most money, were actually being led by people of color, and 4 of them were women. Right. And so I share that, but it took a lot. It took clarity on each domain, all the work to build the system, and then to bring my colleagues, my boss, my board, and to say to them, we're going to do this. Here's why we're going to do it. Here's how it's going to happen. Here's when it's going to happen. Here's why we think it's important and good for the company. And by the way, some people won't like it. Some people are definitely not going to like it. Some people inside the company won't like it. Some people outside the company won't like it. Some customers may not like it. And we just want to make sure, we expect that and we're prepared, but we want you to be prepared too. And as they say in Spanish, dicho y hecho. When we announced it, we got some angry customer letters. There were some very ugly articles written encouraging people to, sue me and do all these things. But the point is, we were very prepared. So you need to have clarity. You need to have buy-in from other people. You need to know how to navigate tough dialogue and it's not about escalating. It's just about never giving up on having the dialogue. And then you just have to have actual discipline, real clarity, and you have to have rigor in how you execute against it. And to me, a lot of places never get past stage 1 or 2, much less get to the level of detail that you have to get to. What I'm really hopeful is that in tech, we're going to start helping build the kinds of systems and platforms and technology that can help advance transparency and advance our ability to define, track, and measure these kinds of things. Now, so we're a long way from that, but I am hopeful that in tech, especially if we have more Latinas, especially if we have more people who are committed to transparency and equity, we're going to get there. But not until we have people who care about it and actually can bring their expertise, their heads, their hearts, their hands to the effort. That's when we're going to start to see real momentum, I think.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I know we could do a whole session on this topic. So I appreciate you giving me.
I get very excited though, because I do think it matters. It matters a lot. It matters a lot. And it's really hard. And I want people to have heart, about sticking with it, because I know I've experienced firsthand. I know how hard the conversations can be. I know how hard it can be in general. And it's exhausting sometimes, but it's worth it. And if we don't stick with it, if we're not willing to use our voice, if we're not willing to stick out our chin and keep pushing, it's not going to happen.
Right. And I know we have a couple minutes left, but I really want to ask this question because it's super important. You know, I'm part of the board at Latinas in Tech, the nonprofits. I'm also their secretary. So it's been really exciting to partner with the organization. And I know you're part of public boards, but also have been and are on part of nonprofit boards. Now companies are strongly encouraged, even required, you know, I would say.
They're required. A bunch of places they're required now.
Exactly, required to have, you know, representation of women and people of color at the board level. Can you maybe tell us a little bit of what Latinas can do to better position themselves for board service at a nonprofit or even, like, you know, someday at a public company?
Yeah, well, the two are fairly different, and I treat them fairly differently because having nonprofit service generally doesn't lead to or prepare you for public company board service. But on the nonprofit front, you know, I would say probably the most important thing is to make sure whatever nonprofit you're thinking about is something that you're really passionate about, because I think life is, you know, I think of, you know, everybody is a little different, but I think, gosh, you have a life, you have a family, you have a job, you have so many things to deal with. And so a commitment to a board, a nonprofit board, is additional time and investment. So the first and most important thing is be passionate about the organization, because it'll help, you know, in those moments when it's hard and you're reaching for more time or things are difficult for the organization, you want to be passionate about it. Second, the good thing about that is you're basically helping oversee a nonprofit. And just remember, keep in mind, not every board, but most boards, their role is to raise funds for the organization, to help make sure that the organization is funded, to help make sure that the staff is what they need, and, you know, they're working the right way, they have the right staff, the right resources, and it's headed in the right direction, and has the right strategy. So just think about, if you have to like doing that, think about that. On the public company side, it's very different. So what I point out to people is these seats are pretty, even with the proliferation of companies and these rules, the seats are pretty limited. And again, remember what it is that boards do. The boards have a few really important roles, and it has shifted, but the board basically hires and fires the CEO of the company. They evaluate the performance of the CEO. They ensure CEO succession. They ensure the company has the right strategy and monitor to make sure that the company has the right controls and risk management programs in place. Boards do lots of other things, but at the end of the day, those are the most important things. So in your career, what you need to think about is cultivating experiences and expertise that relate to the things that boards do, right? So if you're a finance professional, you know, in tech, thinking about, do you understand what an independent audit is, what the role of independent auditors are, what audit committees of boards do, and getting that exposure and experience as much as you can. If you're an HR professional in tech, or you're on the HR side, learning about executive compensation and incentive programs and those kinds of things, which is what compensation committees do. And if you're a corporate secretary, learning about governance, board procedure, board process, good governance, those are all things that will help. Those are the types of experiences that will help prepare you. And then finally, I just have to say, is getting a public company board seat is very difficult. You have to network like crazy. And what I mean by that is you have to know why you want to be on a board. You have to have an elevator pitch. You know, if you're in an elevator with someone for, you know, a minute, can you explain to them in a minute or less why you should be on a board and that you want to be on a board? And then you just have to talk to lots of people on boards, or who look for board members, or who are in business, and make it known that you would like to do it. Ask for advice. What can I do? Is there anything I need to learn? What would you suggest? And just for reference, some people are very desirable to get on boards right away. It took me, from the moment I decided I would like to be on a public company board, it took me 5 years for me to get on my first public company board. Now, I started early, so that, I mean, I started very early in age, but just as they're diversifying around gender and ethnicity, they're also, I think, increasingly bringing younger people to boards, which is a good thing. But so I'll
That's helpful.
yeah, but you gotta do the networking.
Yeah, that's important in every, I guess, phase of your role, actually. So we're run out of time, but of course, I would love to have you back at some point because we could talk all day about all these things. And I'm super inspired by you. I hope that our Latinas that are online right now have found this super inspirational as well. So thank you for your time, Kim.
Oh, it's my
And
pleasure.
now we're gonna go to Q&A. So thank you.
Terrific.